The steel doors closed with a deafening clang, cutting Corbin Montgomery off from the outside world for another day. 5 years in Green Haven, maximum security prison had taught him to appreciate every second and plan every action. The 29-year-old man didn't look broken despite his life sentence. His posture remained straight, and his gaze sharp and attentive. "Montgomery, out. Work in the laundry room," the guard commanded, tapping his baton against the bars. Corbin rose from his narrow bunk and silently followed his escort. His movements were economical, calculated, as an ex-military man should be. 5 years ago, Corbin's life had collapsed overnight when he was accused of murdering a powerful businessman. All the evidence pointed to him, though Corbin himself still maintained his innocence. Corbin took his place silently at the sorting line. During his years in prison, he had earned the respect of both the other inmates and the guards. He didn't get into fights, didn't take part in prison gangs, but everyone knew not to mess with him. There was something about the look in his eyes, the confidence of a man who could stand up for himself. "Hey, Monty," whispered an inmate nicknamed Bird, who was sorting laundry next to him. "Hey, I got news for you, from my cousin on the outside." Corbin nodded faintly as he continued his work. Bird was known for his connections outside the prison and often traded information. "Your wife, Monty." Bird hesitated. "My cousin saw her in town, not alone, with a suit of some kind. They, not just friends." Corbin's hands froze for a moment over the pile of laundry. Amara, the one person who'd believed in his innocence all these years. Or so he thought. "My cousin says the guy's some kind of tough guy lawyer. Darian Mbisi, black suit, expensive watch. They were at a restaurant together, and then they went to her gallery. And he stayed the night, you know." Corbin silently continued sorting, but something broke inside him. Amara was his anchor, his hope for justice. Thinking of her had helped him survive in this concrete hell. Now, "Thank you for the information," Corbin said quietly. "Can you find out more about this Mbasi?" Bird nodded. "It'll cost you 2 packs of cigarettes." "It's a deal." That evening, lying on the bunk in his cell, Corbin thought seriously about escaping for the first time in 5 years. Before, he'd believed in the system, hoped the truth would come out sooner or later, and he'd be exonerated. But now he had nothing left. A week later, Bird brought new information. Darian Mbisi turned out to be a prominent criminal defense attorney with an impeccable reputation. What's more interesting is that 5 years ago he worked for the DA's office and tried Corbin. Coincidence? Corbin didn't think so. The escape plan had formed in his mind gradually, with military precision. Corbin studied guard shift patterns, supply routes, security systems. As a former Special Forces sergeant, he had skills that helped him notice details invisible to others. A key element was the work in the laundry room. Every Thursday, a truckload of clean laundry traveled outside the prison, bound for a nearby hospital. Corbin noticed that the driver always left the truck unattended for 15 minutes while he drank coffee with one of the guards. 2 weeks of preparation, and the plan was ready. On the day of the escape, Corbin hid in one of the large bags of clean laundry, having made prior arrangements with Bird to divert the guards' attention. "Hey, guards! There's Rodriguez slitting his wrists," shouted Bird when the truck was already loaded and ready to go. A commotion began. Corbin, hidden in the bag, could hear shouting and stomping. Then the truck doors closed and the vehicle moved off. 15 minutes in the stuffy sack seemed like an eternity. Finally, the truck came to a stop. Corbin heard the driver get out of the cab. After waiting another minute, he climbed out of the bag and cautiously opened the truck door. Hospital parking lot. No security. Corbin got out of the truck quickly, but without fuss, and headed for the exit of the grounds. He was wearing the hospital technician uniform he had prepared in advance and stashed in a bag. An hour later, Corbin Montgomery was already 20 kilometers from the prison, having changed his hospital uniform for civilian clothes bought in a thrift store. He had one goal: to get to Burlington and find out the truth. That same morning, Detective Lucas Benji was finishing his third cup of coffee when the head of the department entered his office. "Benji, you have a new case and a new partner." She nodded at the young woman standing next to her. "Meet Detective Naila Abdullah, a transfer from Chicago." Lucas gave his new colleague an appraising glance. Slim, short haircut and shrewd eyes. Seemed smart and focused. "What's the case?" he asked, extending his hand in greeting. "Escape from Green Haven. One Corbin Montgomery, convicted of murder, served 5 years of a life sentence, escaped this morning." Lucas whistled. No one had escaped from Green Haven in the last 10 years. "Not until today," the warden confirmed. "Montgomery's ex-military special forces organized his escape through the laundry room. Pretty ingenious." Naila picked up the case file and started studying the fugitive's photo. "Any idea where he's headed?" she asked. "The case file says he has a wife in Burlington," the supervisor replied. "Amara Montgomery, who owns an art gallery. Start with her." 2 hours later, Lucas and Naila parked outside a small art gallery in downtown Burlington. A modern building with large windows and a minimalist sign that read, "Amara Gallery." "How do we proceed?" Naila asked, adjusting her jacket. "Standard procedure. Warn her about her husband's escape, ask if he's contacted her, set up surveillance," Lucas said. "Fugitives usually seek help from their loved ones first." Inside the gallery, it was quiet and cool. Abstract paintings hung on the walls and soft music played. A young woman sat at the receptionist's desk. "We're looking for Amara Montgomery." Lucas showed his badge. "Detectives Benji and Abdullah." "Just a minute." The girl pressed a button on her cell phone. "Amara, the police are here to see you." A few minutes later, Amara emerged from the far room. A 28-year-old woman with dark chocolate skin and short dreadlocks was dressed in an elegant ivory pantsuit. She looked worried, but she held her dignity. "What can I do for you, detectives?" she asked, inviting them into her office. Lucas noticed that her hands shook slightly as she closed the door. "Mrs. Montgomery, your husband escaped from jail this morning." Lucas cut straight to the chase. Amara froze, her eyes widening with shock. Or was this a good game? "Corbin escaped?" She sank slowly into the chair. "That was impossible. He wouldn't do that." "And yet he did," Naila interjected, watching the woman's reaction carefully. "You haven't heard from him? Calls, letters, messages through people you know?" "No," Amara shook her head. "We spoke on the phone 3 days ago, a routine call from the prison. Nothing out of the ordinary." "Mrs. Montgomery," Lucas stepped forward, "if your husband contacts you, you have an obligation to notify the police immediately. Harboring a fugitive is a serious offense." Amara nodded, but a strange light flashed in her eyes. Fear? Guilt? Anxiety? "I understand that, detective. But I don't think he's going to contact me." "Why do you think that?" Naila asked. Amara hesitated for a moment. Things haven't been going well for us lately. I've started a new life, you know. 5 years is a long time." "Do you have another man?" Lucas asked bluntly. Amara flinched but nodded. "Yes. We've been dating for a few months. I've been meaning to tell Corbin about it, but I've been hesitant." "What's the name of your new partner?" Naila pulled out a notebook. "Darian Imbasi. He's a lawyer." Lucas and Naila looked at each other. The situation was taking a new turn. "Mrs. Montgomery," Naila put her card on the table. "If your husband shows up, call immediately. And for your own safety, we'll set up surveillance of the gallery and your home." When the detectives left the office, Amara sat motionless, staring into the void. Her hands no longer trembled, but her face expressed a mixture of fear and relief. She pulled out her phone and started to dial, then stopped and put it back on the table. "He shouldn't have run away," she whispered into the void. It wasn't supposed to be like this. The next morning, Naila Abdullah sat at a desk piled high with files on the Corbin Montgomery case. She methodically studied each document, making notes in her notebook. Lucas Benji entered the office carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Did you find anything interesting?" he asked, placing one of the cups in front of his partner. "Maybe." Nyla nodded gratefully. "I'm looking into the original murder case for which Montgomery got a life sentence. Something's confusing me." Lucas sat down on the edge of the table, sipping his coffee. "Tell me." Corbin Montgomery is a former Special Forces sergeant, 2 tours of duty in hotspots, spotless record, Nyla began. He returned to civilian life, married Amara, worked as a tactical training instructor for a private security company. No trouble with the law before that murder. "That doesn't mean anything," Lucas shrugged. "Many criminals were model citizens before their first serious offense." "I agree, but listen to this." Nyla flipped to the next page. Victim: Randall Kingsley, big businessman, owner of a chain of high-end clubs, shot in his office on the evening of April 16, 2020. Weapon is a Glock 17, left at the scene. Montgomery's prints on it, his DNA on the casings. "Sounds like pretty compelling evidence," Lucas said. "Yeah, but the motive's a little thin. The reports say that Kingsley allegedly turned down Montgomery's job as a security guard at his clubs, and he held a grudge. But why would a professional like Montgomery leave a gun with prints at a crime scene? And even more interesting, I couldn't find any record of Montgomery ever approaching Kingsley about a job." Lucas frowned. "You're right, it is weird. What else?" "Here's what's even more interesting." Nyla opened another file. The prosecutor on the case was Darian Mbisi, Amara Montgomery's current boyfriend. He'd gone into private practice right after that trial, started his own firm, and now specialized in criminal cases. Lucas whistled. "So the prosecutor who put Montgomery behind bars is now dating his wife? That's interesting." "And I checked the prison visitation records," Nyla continued. "Amara visited her husband regularly for the first 3 years. Then the visits became less frequent. And with Mbasi, according to Amara, they've been seeing each other for a few months. But I found a photo on social media of them together at some charity event 6 months ago. Do you think they've been dating longer than she admitted?" "Maybe." Nyla closed the folder. "Lucas, what if Montgomery really is innocent? What if he was framed?" Lucas rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "Interesting theory, but we need more proof. Let's check Mbisi's alibi for the time of Kingsley's murder and talk to the original witnesses. It'd also be good to find Montgomery before he does something stupid." Amara paced the living room of her apartment nervously. From the bedroom came the sound of water as Darian showered. They had spent the night together, but tonight Amara felt strangely tense. The news of Corbin's escape had turned everything upside down. Darian came out of the bedroom, wiping his damp hair with a towel. His expensive suit fit his athletic figure perfectly. "You're still nervous," he remarked, watching Amara. "Calm down. The police will find him soon." "You don't understand," Amara objected. "Corbin's not stupid. If he escaped, he has a plan. And I'm afraid that plan has something to do with me. And you." Darian walked over to her and put his hands on her shoulders. "Amara, listen to me. Even if he comes after you, the police are watching the gallery in your house. He won't be able to get close. You don't know Corbin like I do." She released herself from his arms. "He was in special powers. If he wanted to, he'd find a way around police surveillance." "What are you suggesting?" Irritation rose in Darian's voice. "That you move in with me? I think we should tell the police." "No!" Darian interrupted her sharply. "We've already discussed this. We have nothing to talk to the police about." "But Corbin has escaped. That changes the situation." "It doesn't change anything." Darian lowered his voice, but there was steel in it. "He's a fugitive, a murderer. He will be caught and sent back to prison, perhaps an even stricter one, and we will go on with our lives." Amara turned away, looking out the window. "I'm not sure I can go on living like this anymore, Darian. These lies, it's eating me up inside." Darian came up behind her and put his arms around her. "Amara," his voice softened, We've been through so much together. Are you really going to let it all fall apart now? Think about our future. What if he knows? Her voice trembled. What if Corbin somehow knew the truth and that's why he ran away? He doesn't know anything, Darian replied confidently. He can't know. And even if he did, who would believe a convicted murderer? Amara sighed, but didn't argue further. Darian glanced at his watch. I have to go to the office. Don't do anything stupid, okay? And keep me posted if there's any news from the police. When the door closed behind Darian, Amara sank heavily onto the couch. The guilt she had successfully suppressed for the past 5 years now threatened to overwhelm her. Meanwhile, Corbin Montgomery sat in a shabby pickup truck parked across the street from the apartment complex where Amara lived. He saw a tall man in an expensive suit come out of the entryway, Darian Mbisi. The prosecutor who had put him behind bars was now sleeping with his wife. Corbin took a few pictures on an old film camera. Digital devices were easier to track. He watched as Darian got into a black BMW and drove away. Corbin started the pickup and followed at a safe distance. The BMW stopped in front of a modern office building in Burlington's business district. The sign at the entrance read, Mbasi and Associates Law Office. Corbin took a few more pictures, then drove off and parked a few blocks from the office. He pulled an old newspaper clipping out of the glove compartment, a picture of Randall Kingsley at a charity event. Standing next to him was a young Darian Mbisi. The caption read, Businessman Randall Kingsley and his legal counsel, Darian Mbisi, at the annual Red Cross Ball. Corbin didn't know the whole truth, but he was gradually putting the pieces of the puzzle together. Kingsley and Mbasi knew each other. Mbasi had prosecuted the case against Corbin. Now, Mbasi was dating Amara. There were too many coincidences. Back at Amara's house, Corbin spotted a police car patrolling the neighborhood. He lowered his visor and pretended to read a map as the car drove by. His military training allowed him to remain undetected, to blend in with his surroundings. Soon, Amara emerged from the entryway. She was dressed in simple jeans and a sweater, her hair gathered in a bun. Corbin felt a strange prick in his heart. Despite everything, she was still his wife, the woman he loved. But now, he needed the truth. Amara got into her car and drove toward downtown. Corbin followed at a distance, trying not to attract attention. She stopped at her gallery, but didn't get out of the car right away. Corbin noticed that she sat gripping the steering wheel tightly, as if gathering her thoughts. Finally, Amara got out of the car and headed into the gallery. Through the large windows, Corbin saw her speak to the receptionist, then disappear into her office. Corbin parked the pickup around the corner and walked back, keeping in the shadows. He noticed a police car parked not far from the gallery, obviously the surveillance that Bird had mentioned. Using the skills he had learned in the military, Corbin crept stealthily to the back door of the gallery. He knew the layout. He had helped Amara with rearranging the exhibit several times in the past. The lock on the service entrance was simple, and in a minute, Corbin was already inside. He moved silently down the hallway, listening for voices. From Amara's office came her muffled voice. She was on the phone with someone. I can't do this anymore, Amara said. Corbin doesn't deserve this. I have to tell the truth. A pause. She listened to the person she was talking to. No, Darian. I've made up my mind. I'm going to the police today. I'll tell them everything about Kingsley, about us, about everything. 5 years is enough time for this lie. Corbin's heart beat faster. So he was right. He'd been set up, and Amara was going to come clean. I don't care what happens to you. Amara's voice was filled with tears. You manipulated me from the beginning. I was young and stupid, and I let you convince me that Corbin never truly loved me, that he was using me. But it was a lie. Pause again. No, I'm not changing my mind. I'll be at the police station in an hour. Don't try to stop me. Corbin heard her drop the phone on the table, then the sound of quiet sobs. He wanted to go in, to talk to her, but that would be too risky. Right now, he needed to wait until she went to the police and follow her discreetly. There, he could surrender to the authorities and corroborate her statement. He quietly returned to the service exit and left the building, unnoticed by the patrolman. Getting into his pickup truck, Corbin decided to wait for Amara to come out of the gallery. Half an hour later, he saw Darian Mbezi quickly pull up to the gallery and run inside. Corbin tensed. Something was not right. Mbezi looked alarmed, even furious. Corbin got out of the pickup and headed toward the gallery with a quick stride. He had almost reached the entrance when he heard a gunshot, then another. Without thinking of the danger, Corbin burst into the gallery. There was no administrator behind the counter. He rushed to Amara's office and swung the door open. Amara lay on the floor, blood oozing from the wound in her chest. Darian stood next to her with a gun in his hand. Their gazes met. "You're too late, Montgomery," Darian said coldly. Corbin rushed toward Amara, but at that moment he heard shouts from behind him. "Police! Stay where you are!" Detectives Lucas Benji and Naila Abdullah appeared in the doorway, guns drawn. The red tape of the police fence fluttered in the wind around the Amara Art Gallery. Detective Naila Abdullah stood over the woman's body as forensics officers secured the crime scene. Amara Montgomery lay on the floor of her office, the life gone from her slender body. 2 bullet wounds in her chest, close-range gunshots. Next to her was a gun, the same gun that had fired the shots. Lucas Benji approached his partner, holding a clear evidence bag. "The gun is registered to Darian Mbezi," he said. "But Corbin Montgomery's prints are on it, not Mbezi's." "Convenient," Naila remarked, not taking her eyes off the body. "Where's Mbezi now?" "In the ambulance. He's got a concussion and a broken arm. Claims Montgomery attacked him when he entered the office and found Amara dead." Naila snorted incredulously. "That doesn't fit with my observations. We saw Montgomery leaning over Amara and Mbezi holding a gun." "But the gun was in Montgomery's hand when we entered the office," Lucas objected. "Mbezi says that he managed to knock it out of Montgomery's hands, and the latter attacked him in return. In the commotion, Montgomery managed to escape through the back door." "If that's true, why couldn't we catch up with him?" Naila asked. "We were only a few steps behind." Lucas shrugged his shoulders. "This guy is an ex-Special Forces guy. He knows how to hide." Naila bit her lip, staring at Amara's lifeless body. Something about this story didn't add up, but she couldn't yet pinpoint exactly what it was. "What about the receptionist?" she asked. "She'd left for lunch 15 minutes before the accident. Claims she didn't see Montgomery or Mbezi." Naila looked around the office again. Amara's desk was fine, no signs of a struggle except for the area around her body. On the desk, her phone, her purse, a notepad with notes. It's like Amara wasn't expecting an attack. "Check the calls on her phone," Naila asked a colleague from the crime lab. "We need to know who she spoke to before she died." Outside the gallery, the police chief spoke to reporters. "Wanted Corbin Montgomery, 29 years old, escaped convict, suspected of murdering his wife Amara Montgomery. Armed and extremely dangerous. Citizens are asked to remain vigilant and report any suspicious individuals." Naila turned away from the window. She wasn't entirely convinced of Corbin's guilt. Something about Mbezi's testimony didn't add up. "Lucas," she called out to her partner, "let's go through the security footage around the gallery. We need to see who went in and out just before the murder." For the next 24 hours, the city was on alert. Corbin Montgomery's picture was all over the news, on every corner, on social media. A reward was offered for information on his whereabouts. Police patrols combed neighborhood after neighborhood. All motels, hostels, abandoned buildings were checked. At the police station, Naila stared at the computer screen, studying the surveillance videos. She'd already gone through dozens of hours of footage, but Corbin was nowhere to be seen. "Are you still on this?" Lucas asked, setting a cup of coffee in front of her. "You need to rest." "No, I feel like I'm missing something important." She rubbed her tired eyes. "How's Mbezi's testimony? Did he change his story?" "No, he's sticking to his story. He says he came to the gallery to pick Amara up for lunch, and found Montgomery standing over her body with a gun in his hand. Nyla sighed and opened the folder containing Corbin's original case file. "I cross-checked all the testimony in the Kingsley case," she said, "and I found some strange inconsistencies. For example, the only witness who saw Montgomery enter Kingsley's office the night of the murder changed his statement 3 times. I also found out that Mbisi wasn't just Kingsley's legal counsel, but his trustee. Kingsley was going to change his will the day before he died. His secretary confirmed it." Lucas frowned. "And who was the inheritance supposed to go to?" "We don't know that. The new will hadn't been signed. But under the old will, a large part of Kingsley's shares went to various charitable foundations run by..." Nyla paused. "Darian Mbesi." "So you think Mbesi killed Kingsley and framed Montgomery?" Lucas shook his head. "That's a serious accusation, Nyla. We need hard evidence." "I'm working on it," she nodded. "Please check Mbesi's financial history after Kingsley's death. I want to know how he could afford to open his own law firm so quickly." While the police were searching for Corbin, the fugitive himself was hiding in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Burlington. His face was all over the news, but his beard and cap helped keep him anonymous on his rare forays into the city. He bought a used laptop at a pawn shop and connected to the internet through the public network at a nearby cafe. Corbin watched the news coverage of Amara's murder. All the evidence pointed to him. The perfect setup, almost like 5 years ago. But this time he wasn't going down without a fight. In his pocket was the flash drive he'd taken from Amara's purse that fateful day. He plugged it into his laptop. The flash drive contained documents, photos, and audio recordings. Amara was gathering evidence. Proof of Darian Mbesi's conspiracy against Kingsley. Proof of his own innocence. One of the audio recordings in particular caught his attention. A conversation between Amara and Darian, dated 3 months earlier. "I can't live with these lies anymore, Darian." Amara's voice sounded exhausted. "Corbin is innocent, and we let him rot in prison. I was too young, too naive, when you convinced me that this was the only way we could be together." "Don't be dramatic, Amara." Darian's voice was cold. "Montgomery was just a means to an end. Kingsley was going to take away my control of the funds. He found out about my financial shenanigans. I needed a scapegoat, and your husband was perfect for the role." "I love him, Darian. I've always loved him. But that didn't stop you from helping me frame him, did it?" Corbin stopped the tape, feeling nausea coming up to his throat. Amara had been part of the conspiracy, but then she'd repented and was going to make things right, and paid for it with her life. Now he had a goal, to get this evidence to the police and clear his name. But first, he wanted to confront Darian face to face. At the police station, Nyla was going over the financial reports Lucas had brought in. "Look," she pointed to the screen. Immediately after Kingsley's death, Mbesi gained control of 3 charitable foundations with a total capital of about $30 million. And here are the transactions. He transferred the money through offshore accounts, then back to the US, but as personal investments. "Damn it," Lucas said. "So he had motive to kill Kingsley. And to frame Montgomery," Nyla added. "I think Amara was an accomplice. Maybe Mbesi seduced her, convinced her husband didn't appreciate her. And when she decided to come clean, she was interrupted by a phone call." Lucas answered and hung up a minute later. "Corbin Montgomery was seen outside Mbesi's house," he said. "Let's go." The upscale Burlington neighborhood where Darian Mbesi lived was quiet and peaceful. Police cars with their sirens off surrounded the luxurious mansion. Lucas and Nyla, wearing body armor and guns at the ready, approached the front door. "Burlington PD, open the door!" Lucas shouted. Silence. Nyla nodded to the extraction team, and they kicked the door open. The house was empty. No sign of struggle or hasty flight. On the coffee table in the living room was an envelope labeled "For Detectives Benji and Abdullah." Nyla carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a flash drive and a note. "Here is the whole truth about Randall Kingsley and Amara Montgomery. I have Mbesi, Blue Wave Wharf, Warehouse 7, K. Montgomery. Is this a trap? Lucas asked. I don't know. Nyla hesitated. But we should check it out. The old Blue Wave Wharf was a few kilometers from the city center. Abandoned warehouses, rusty containers, and the smell of tin created an oppressive atmosphere. Police cars surrounded Warehouse 7. Officers took up positions. Corbin Montgomery! Lucas shouted through the megaphone. You're surrounded! Come out with your hands up! A moment later, the warehouse door slowly opened. Corbin Montgomery stood on the threshold, his hands raised above his head. Don't shoot, he said calmly. Inmate is inside, tied up. He's alive and well. The extraction team quickly disarmed Corbin and broke into the warehouse. Darian Inmate was indeed in there, tied to a chair. On the table next to him was a tape recorder. Play the tape, Corbin said as Lucas handcuffed him. He confessed to everything. Nyla pressed the play button. Darian's voice, filled with rage and contempt, filled the room. Yes, I killed Kingsley, and your precious Amara too. She became the weak link, was going to ruin everything. I deserved everything I got. Years of working for that pompous old man, putting up with his condescension, his morals. And then he decided to change his will, to take away my control of the funds. Me, the man who created his entire philanthropic empire. The recording continued. Inmate going into detail about how he'd killed Kingsley, how he'd framed Corbin, how he'd manipulated Amara all these years. He didn't know I was recording, Corbin explained. He thought I'd kill him, but I wanted justice, not revenge. Nyla looked at Darian Inmate, who sat with his head down. All his arrogance had evaporated. Only the anger of a cornered predator remained. Darian Inmate, you're under arrest for the murder of Randall Kingsley and Amara Montgomery, she said formally, removing his ropes and handcuffing him. Lucas, meanwhile, turned to Corbin. You still broke the law by escaping from prison and taking Inmate hostage, but this evidence might help to revise your case. I understand, Corbin nodded. I am ready to go back to prison and wait for a new trial. 3 months later, Corbin Montgomery sat in the courtroom, listening to the verdict. The evidence Amara had gathered, combined with Inmate's confession and the financial documents Nyla had uncovered, was irrefutable. His conviction was completely overturned, and the charges were dropped. Darian Inmate, on the other hand, received 2 life sentences without parole for the murders of Kingsley and Amara. Exiting the courthouse, Corbin stopped on the steps. Nyla walked up to him. What now, Mr. Montgomery? I don't know, he answered honestly. 5 years in prison, losing my wife. Starting from scratch at 30 is hard, but it's possible, Nyla said softly. Justice had been served, albeit belatedly. Corbin looked up at the sky. It was a clear day, but there was still a heaviness in his heart. Do you know what the hardest part is? He asked. Amara was part of the conspiracy against me, and then she tried to make things right and got herself killed. I don't know if I can forgive her or just mourn her. Time will help sort out those feelings, Nyla replied. You'll need professional help to deal with the trauma. Corbin nodded. A new life was ahead, free, but full of bitterness and uncertainty. Justice had been served, but the price had been prohibitive. Goodbye, detective, he said as he walked down the steps. And thank you for continuing to pursue the truth. Nyla watched Corbin Montgomery walk away into a new life, a lone figure against the cityscape. There were no real winners in this case, only victims of circumstance and human frailties.